Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Lux the Gray here. I wanted to do another GURPS related video because I've been hooked on this system, the third edition specifically, for the entire week. Now, uh, this system is very fascinating to me. And here are some housekeeping notes I like to mention in practically every video. So it might be a broken record to some of my consistent viewers. This is not a review. This is not a first impressions. This is not a how-to or tutorial. I am a amateur to RPGs. These videos serve as my record keeping for my experiences, for my learning process. I like to share these experiences as a way to level with my viewers and see how um, I can relate or learn in parallel with you. If you are also an amateur RPG enthusiast, that perhaps these videos can serve as a mechanism to see how I can fault at times or succeed at times. If you are a very experienced RPG enthusiast, then welcome, first off. Welcome to all of you. But if you are experienced or if you've been playing for several years now, longer than I have, then this might be just a little, if it's background noise, that's totally fine. But if you're curious how people are, well, I guess not people, essentially, I guess maybe people in my category of solo RPGing and new to RPGs are trying to learn nowadays compared to, in the past, no matter 5, 10 plus years, then that's fine too. So I'm not sure what category I would fit in. I guess amateur RPG player would be fine, but also in that subcategory of solo RPG-ist. So it's very unique. I'm a very unique spot. So with that aside, no, I'm sorry to waste your time. I just wanted to get that out there. And I haven't really seen any um, negativity on the channel. I just feel like that's just a good little disclaimer so I don't these aren't misleading to anybody, to my viewers, because I've noticed a growing audience, a very steady growing audience for my channel, and that's fantastic. And I extremely appreciate everybody who subscribes. I'm not really here to say subscribe, like, share, blah, blah, blah. I just make these videos for fun because this keeps me sane. This keeps me occupied my time after, before work. And it's just incredibly fun. So, and I regret that I didn't do this when I was a kid, years ago. I regret that I didn't take on RPGs, but I'm doing it now, and I feel like a it's a task that I need to continue on. So, with that aside, GURPS is probably the most sophisticated system I've been learning to date. And I'm saying that very loosely because I've only been learning it for a week now. I know the general basics of D&D. I don't know the advanced D&D second, third edition. I don't know the very advanced rules of D&D in general, but this has the most rules that I've ever come across. Because a lot of the systems I own on the side that are collecting dust or have occasionally opened out are Maze Rats, Dungeon World, Death in Space, Into the Odd. Scarlet Heroes is probably the only other advanced system that I bothered to try. Savage Worlds I always look at and say I'm going to teach myself, and I never actually bother to. And that's a kind of mid-range, easy to learn game. But GURPS is definitely an old school retro system that has a lot of rules. But it's also simple to learn, as it seems to be mentioned to a lot of GURPS players. And that's fantastic. So what intrigued me though is the character creation process. That this seems to be a con for a lot of the videos I've been watching. People say con, um, whether that's bad or good, that's debatable. But the character creation process has got me hooked so much that I made a few characters already. I've been putting off the Exeter campaign because I got this addiction at the moment, GURPS. And I'm so tempted to start a test run campaign using GURPS, not calling it anything specifically, but calling it GURPS Solo RPG Campaign Episode 1. And this is the character I shaped out with my entire focus and dedication to for a solid day. Days meaning like throughout 2 or 3 days, 4 or 5 hours at a time. This is the character Dex Raymond, and it is a fantasy-based character. This sheet, again, I found online. He has everything. That system I use with the point total I've used with 150. Now, I'm aware that there's a fourth edition, and I have the fourth edition, But because I was not aware of it when I found this third edition copy, I've been stuck on third edition, and I like third edition. Will I learn fourth edition? I have both the campaign and character books, perhaps later in the future, but I want to focus on this. And I feel like if I perfect, that's using, I'm using perfect lightly here. If I play GURPS enough, to know it inside and out, whether it's house rule or by the book, that's also debatable, then I probably can move on to 4E. But I love the feel of this old book that's been, that was sitting in a store, a used store for some time. And with all the other games I have to my side, I can't put them off. Like I tried Scarlet Heroes for a bit, but for some reason I just kind of fell off. I like the game, but there was concepts of the system that pushed me away, which is ironic because it has a solo concept and it has a good sophisticated system enough to roll dice mechanics. This one jumps the shark, or not jumps the shark. This one takes the bait for me as far as interest. So this is the character I made. I won't go through it thoroughly. If I decide to do a GURPS campaign, solo RPG campaign, I will introduce the character, of course. I'm gonna put that aside because I feel like I'm gonna reference that quite a bit. Now, the last couple of videos I've done on GURPS was the character creation, which was with another character, trying to just learn GURPS in general. This video will be entirely focused on these notes I took. For me, learning is not a struggle, but it is a multiple. There's multi-layered approach I like to try at times, whether it's something at work or in personal, writing stuff down or watching videos, visual aids, etc. Everyone has a different method of learning. For me, and I believe for a lot of people, it's writing stuff down at times. Doesn't always work for me, but if I'm highly interested in a subject matter, for example, RPGs down to the down to GURPS, then I have to write it down. I didn't think about trying this for RPGs. I usually just read the book. I do a playtest video, and you guys watch and you comment saying if I did something wrong or if you liked it, etc. But this is definitely a first for me. I type out my own rule systems a lot. They always change every other day. That's just the nature of the beast. But for this, trying to write out all the character creation process and then the moves, and we'll get to that in a second, this really helped me out. So here's what I'm going to do. This will be as usual, an informal video. I'm going to go through the notes I took for character creation. And this will also benefit my friend GM Ryan because he's also, to an extent, interested in learning GURPS. He's more interested in building his characters, I should say, plural, because I think that's one thing he really enjoys about RPGs in general, as all of us do, is building the character and seeing them grow. That's why I love solo RPGs. It's not just telling the story, which I have a weakness in some respects, but I feel like seeing the character advance, no matter the rules used, because I have a tendency to change the rules and critique myself too much on the same character, but seeing the character evolve and transition to different roles is absolutely fascinating to me. And that's why I love RPGs as a whole. So with GURPS, what I did, I called it GURPS abridged. It's not really abridged, it's just kind of simplifying everything for me that I see relevant to use in future videos. First, we have character creation, which is on page 10. So we'll go to page 10. I say I won't use the book too often, but it will be on the sidelines. We also have the two pages that are really good to use that are from the back that are rippable. You can tear them out. They have they have a tear point. Now, these cover advantages, disadvantages, all the skills you can use with their levels and their modifiers, etc. Encumbrance levels, basic weapon damage, etc. Clothing, shield. So it's all there. That's a good little summary, but that's not include everything in the game. What helped me was this note-taking process. Okay, before this video continues, I fixed up my camera, so hopefully the white balance, the brightness, and the focus are better. But the first thing for me, it was to create a character concept for your character and a name. Then you want to list the point total in the top right of the box, the point total that the system you're using. I put down references here for possible bank amounts. You have 100, 150, which I underlined. I think 150 is kind of my favorite so far. 200, 300 for superhuman. And you basically use points for buying the character traits. You build your character based on the point system. On page 13, we move to the 4 attribute levels and this little chart here. This chart you use to buy your attributes and their levels respectively. It gives you descriptions of how each attribute would relate to the character, which is very helpful. Then on page 14, you set the speed of your character. So right over here is the speed score. Let me move this over just a bit. The speed score. And for me, that was your your health plus dexterity divided by 4. That becomes your basic speed right here, 6 for this guy. Now, the physical appearance, which I think is good to have. At times I'm debating if I should even bother, but for me, at least for my character, Dex, he is average. I have a tendency to make average characters, and I feel like that keeps less of a burden because of solo RPGing, solo play. You have a lot to handle already. It's one less thing to worry about. But if you want, you could use it. If you are ugly or unattractive, then perhaps you will get points back because it becomes a negative, turns into a positive for another concept of your character. Attractive, handsome, very handsome, that cost more. And I listed them all here for myself with their perks. Page 15 is also height and weight. This little nice side panel, which every page, most pages have a side panel. They're very helpful, and sometimes they're not really too relevant or not too, um, they don't really matter at times. But I believe a lot of the side panels do once you see them. So I'd say probably if you have the book, I'd say maybe glance at them. Like I said, sometimes they're not really useful, doesn't really matter. Sometimes they're very useful, like this matter. So this gives you an example for your strength score and how you would be as a physical your physical height and weight, which may or may not even matter to you. Next is the wealth levels on page 16. You would have wealth levels of dead broke, poor, struggling, average, comfortable, wealthy, very wealthy. Much like before, on appearances, these give you either money or points back, or you have to spend points. If you spend points, these give you extra kick benefits in the game. If you are dead broke, you would probably have problems, but you have 25 more points to spend in something else. That's why I love this game. That's why it's become such an addiction for me, is because it has this point method where it's a balancing act between making your character the ugliest character in the entire planet, but then you have all that points back for something else they can be incredibly good at to help them down the adventure. So the last couple things on this page here is reputation. That is something that I don't really have a tendency to bother with. You probably could. Reputation, I think, is good in some cases. For example, I know Reputation is very. I don't play video games much nowadays as I used to, but I remember Mass Effect Reputation was key. Paragon, for the other side, Renegade Paragon, however it was in Mass Effect. But I remember Mass Effect being the biggest um, game in my eye, in my experience, that reputation was a huge factor, and it helped you or it affected you negatively on how you're approached and spoke in dialogue to the NPCs. That is something you probably could bank on or use in GURPS. Again, for me, I don't really see a preset reputation in the beginning. I'd rather have my character be a nobody, someone in the shadows that becomes someone. That's how I see reputation down the road, not something to have in the beginning compared to wealth and etc. That's why again, these notes are for me. Again, if I type these notes out for my friend GM Ryan, then he would probably want to use the reputation system. That's why I did bother to put some notes, positive +1 bonus up to 4, but then it's 5 points per. Negative reputation, -1 penalty up to -4, I should say down to -4. Reaction rules in general, that will cost you -5 points per. So again, you get points back for bad reputations. You can use something else. But for me, it's skip or make it up. Page 17, FYI, I forgot to mention that. Page 18, again, another thing I would skip is status. You can use this. You can have a high status, a low status. This is different than from what it says wealth or reputation. It reflects your social standing rather than your personal popularity. You can decipher that as you wish, but again, status I would not bother with. It does have modifiers, so you could use them if you want. But for me, I put skip. Again, this channel, these videos are from my experience, not to really cater to anyone else, but that's what I put for my notes here. Now, let me get this out of the way here. So, next is page 19. This has advantages. This is huge. This is the big one of the big handful of things you have to do for your character. Advantages, it's really tough for me. I'm not experienced with GURPS. It's really tough for me to see how they compare to skills. I think these are, as it says, um, these are innate abilities, things you already have, things you have as an edge over others, perhaps. There's multiple ways to describe this, and I've been watching fellow much bigger YouTubers in popularity and subscribe count who are experienced, have years of GURPS experience under their belt, talk about the advantages, disadvantages compared to skills and how it is kind of confusing or not. But I wonder if in 4E they're kind of separated a bit more descriptively. But again, I don't mind. I like advantages. I'm completely okay with it that it's in a separate category. The advantages are down here. You have all these skills. So again, I'm okay with that. But the only hassle is connecting the two when you do a roll, and you have to keep that in mind if the advantage has a correlation with your certain skill. And again, I feel like that's going to be, for me, that's acceptable. I'm willing to take that extra hassle, or I shouldn't say hassle, the extra step to use advantages. Now you have a bunch that you buy them. They're pages 19 through 25, so we'll skip to 26. This is disadvantages. I don't have a tendency to buy disadvantages. I did have a few for my character here to really create kind of create some personality for my character. I chose bad temper and greed. Two small ones that give me 10 points back each. Again, for me, I wouldn't go all crazy on disadvantages. You probably could if you want your character to be incredibly disadvantaged or um, uh, incredibly broken, that's probably fine. Because again, there's different types of disadvantages. You have social, physical, you have there's plenty of disadvantages to choose from. You have mental ones as expected, and they go up to page 40. So it's definitely a big chunk of the advantage slash disadvantage area. Next, you have dependents and duties, which I didn't note because I really don't bother with them. These probably could be past characters or enemies that you have been bound to or dealt with. Quirks. Quirk is smaller. It's just this one page. It's page 41. It's really it. These are much, much smaller issues your character has. As it kind of says here, sensitive about height, loves high places, no drugs or alcohol, flamboyance, show off. These are literally -1 around -1 0 area, and they give you fractions of a, well, or they give you a single digit points back. That's totally fine. This could add to narrative flair and perhaps even playthrough. Next, the biggest one for me, the part that I seem to love the most, skills. Skills is huge, and the table on page 44 is so important to remember, to use. And that's why I'm so happy that the creators of this book, Steve Jackson Games, created this little table. Where are you? There you are. For IQ and dexterity. I should say for physical and mental. Dexterity and IQ. These are so relevant that they confused me in the beginning. I'm like, why is there 3 levels? How do I? Oh, I see. You connect the dexterity. Each skill is a different difficulty level. Easy, hard, easy, average, hard. IQ has 4. Easy, average, hard, very, very hard. The part that was confusing me for skills, because skills did confuse me the most, was the defaults part. Defaults to IQ -5. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Okay, so I see here there is no -5 on the IQ list, but then there are greater ones. I'm like, oh, okay. So, for example, photography. If I want to know be skilled in photography, it says default to IQ 5. That means if your character does not have this skill already on the list, you can attempt this to roll at or under IQ -5. So your IQ score, which for me is 10 over there, would have to be 5 or less. That's a significant modifier, and you have 25% chance or so of getting that score. Because you can pick a camera up and try to use it. Your character can probably pick up and has good luck, would have that lucky moment of learning how to use a camera. But if you are skilled in it, if you want to know, if you want to become a professional photographer, as this picture illustrates, you purchase the points to level that up from its default IQ 5. So photography average, which that can be debatable in real life, but basically to make it per your default score, which is 10 for me, I would have to spend 2 points to bump that up to IQ 10. I would have to roll 10 or less to use a camera or to know how to position my camera, my pictures, rule of thirds, etc. That's how it works. The difficulty and the type, but more so the difficulty and the mental skill required. So easy, average, hard, very hard. Then you look at your IQ score, you calculate it, and for me, I wrote down everything. I wrote down the difficulty, the name of the skill, the modifier, what category it sits under, the cost, and then the level outcoming from the totals. That's how I did my character for for Dex Raymond. Now let's move on because I feel like I was on that for a little too much. But that's because skills is there's a lot to skills. They cover basically 46 through 69, so quite a number of pages to go through, and that's an amazing thing because there are a lot of skills to go through. But we're not here to go through each skill. However, here's another advantage of this game. Make your own skills. Decide how the skill will be and which it will fit under physical dexterity or mental IQ. Make up a skill and decide if it's easy, average, hard. Like nuclear physics, that's going to be very hard. How to tie your shoes, you might not even you won't even need to make a skill. But if you want to tie your shoes, that would be incredibly easy, and that's it. You would just upgrade your tying the shoe. You can tie certain knots, and that can expand to like specialty tying ropes. If you work in the industry field, you can use a rope for construction. That can advance your skill. So again, as fun as that might be, you can make up your own skill. Because GURPS has that huge library of content, there are many other books that I have not been fortunate to find in other categories, sci-fi, fantasy, like World War II, etc. You can adapt those other skills that those books may or may not have into your character. But again, this standard book, the basic set, has a F load of skills to start with. And I could make up my own, but again, I felt I chose the amount of skills I need to start and then advance on with the slightly above average human 150 count. Okay, next is 71, and that's buying equipment. This is very important because your character, there is no class system in this, but with advantages, disadvantages, skills, your character can kind of fall in a stereotypical class system. For this one, it's the equipment, and that's on page 44. If you we keep our hand, I'm sorry. Um, you basically want to buy equipment based on not the points, but the currency that your setting will give you, and that might have an effect on your wealth. For me, I just kind of I don't buy equipment. I just give what I feel is a fair start equipment for my character. For example, I gave him a good number of equipment. Heavy leather armor, small shield, hatchet, saber, large knife, dagger, short sword, etc. Rations, water, first aid kit. Probably a little too much at times, but again, I just decided to give him equipment. I didn't want to throw him out there with just a toothpick. I again, his wealth right now is at 100 gold pieces. That's not after purchasing. That's what I gave him. I gave him all of that. And in the narrative, I could make up a reason why he has all of that. Maybe he just looted a storage unit. I don't know. Again, once we get to GURPS, is that if I do a GURPS campaign, I can talk about that. So buy equipment for me should be more in quotations. Now, next is armor. When you buy your equipment, I'm surprised I didn't do a page. Oh, it's right. I'm sorry. So this is more so just a category. I should star that. The stars are the more important uh, sections that are a overshadowing, overarching category. Next is armor types. So 72, we have armor, and there's a passive defense and there's a damage resistant. This includes the weight and cost and the types of armor to choose, which are right down here on 72. So with my character, I gave him the top tier of the lowest 1.1 through 4 tech level of heavy leather armor, which has a passive defense of 2 and a direct damage resistant of 2 also. That gives him a dodge of 4, etc. So right here, 2 for damage resistant, and then the passive, which is right here, 2, and the 2 for the shield, that gives us a 4. And again, I hope I'm doing that right. I feel like I'm learning a bit more nowadays. Next is choose weapons. That's 73. Fantasy weapons are way back here in 206 and 207, and I turned the page perfectly, actually. I did not mean to do that. But you can choose your weapons here, and they're all in separate categories. I'm not going to go through them precisely, but for fantasy weapons, they're here. Fantasy armor is page 210. Fantasy equipment is 212. There is also modern and ultra tech. Some pages include modern and sci-fi, like I just wrote my note here. Next is reading about the types of attacks that weapons have, thrusting and swinging. So in this game, there's two types of damage. You have thrust and swing. Again, this is a D6 game. All dice are D6. Everything is a D6. There's no D10, there's no D20s. You can house roll a few things that use other dice, but this, at least for my knowledge here, is a D6 game, 3D6 game, and D6 in general. So that's why it says 1D, 2D, -1, -2. You roll it and you apply the modifiers based on the quantity, and then either if it's a penalty or if it's a positive. So next is page 74, which is the damage box, which we just looked at. So the damage box is based on your character's strength. So if you're looking at 10 here, which my character is, his thrusting attack is 1D, which is D6 -2. His swing is a 1D only, so D6. Now there is the choose the shield, which is right here. You have these types of shields right here. There's a handful of them to choose from. I chose for for Dex Raymond. He has a small shield. Nothing. I didn't want to give him anything overkill. Just I wanted to give him good armor to wear on his body, but not a powerful shield. So I gave him the mid-range small shield, which is too passive. And then there's encumbrance. So you have to choose encumbrance because that adds up all your weight. Then you reference the encumbrance chart, which is right here on page 76. This calculates your basic move, your basic speed, then your move. So your basic speed is your move score, and your move score equals basic speed minus your encumbrance penalty. So when you add up your weight for my character total right here, not precise, it's approximate 81 pounds, then with the strength encumbrance levels here, 10, I can hold none 20 pounds, light 40, 6 medium, 120 heavy, 200 heavy, extra heavy. There's penalties. The penalty is right next to the label. My character is just above closest to 2. That's how I made it. I didn't put a decimal. I just put him at 2. So that's -2 from your basic speed. So his move is 4. That's how I calculated it. Basically your total weight is within this encumbrance table. I'm glad you can hold a lot more, but there's a penalty. Some games, for example, like where is it? Where is it? Karen, you can only have 10 items. There's no modifier for that. You can house roll it to have more, like if you have higher strength, but in this game, you can carry 400 pounds, but there'll be a setback for that. And there is a limit. I shouldn't say you can just free for all carry with a cheat code God mode on Skyrim. There is, if you have a very weak strength of 6, you only can carry up to 120 pounds. If you keep carrying more, it becomes a more bigger burden. You can't move at all. You fall face flat. So I shouldn't say there's no limit. I should say there's a big window of opportunity to carry a lot of weight. Next is the um, keep track of everything you spent. So this is pretty much the end of the character creation process in my eyes. I probably missed a few things, but a few minor things, but this is the final moment where you have to keep track of your summary of the points you spent in each category. Attributes, advantages, disadvantages, quirks, which I didn't spend anything, and then skills. Skills, obviously, the most spent that I did. It probably will be for everyone, but I spent 137 out of 150, which means I have. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I had -20 from disadvantage, which gave me 3 points left over. So that means I can upgrade any skill in the future with those 3 extra points. And then at the end of each session, your GM, or in my case, myself, would give an X amount of points for successes. And there is which I forgot to include in my notes here, but I'll make a note here that I'll make a mental note to include how to assign bonus points at the end of each session. So that's how you basically create, that's how I create my characters. Next is the big part where we talk about the gameplay. This is huge. So playing GURPS was always said in the videos I've watched, the tutorial videos, a lot of the players who've been playing for years, they say GURPS is easy. That's probably true. But there's definitely a lot of things you can do with it, with the mention of it being easy. And that is you just roll 3d6 for everything on top of modifiers. So let me go through, I'll try to go through these without the book because this is the part that I want to, I feel like I've done enough character creation to go through the book, create it, not have any trouble. Gameplay is something I need to challenge myself on, and I need to avoid the book for this little run through here. So, ignore my chicken scratch we got here. Success rolls, which is on page 86. The default rolls, there is no relevant skill. You just roll to the attributes your character has in line with that moment of the roll. The penalty modifiers could be applied for difficulty or ease. So if it's difficult, -2, that it affects the number you're rolling at, not the dice you're rolling, but the number, the modifiers apply to the numbers. Think of these as DCs in D&D. The modifiers affect these, then you roll the dice. If it's easy, or if it's hard, penalty. If it's easier, you'll get a positive modifier. So there's a bigger window to roll at. I might as well keep my character sheet right here, actually, since I'm not going to be using the book. Again, for now. Now, next is automatic successes. There's no rules needed. These things are so trivial. Again, tie your shoes. You can just, the GM will be like, yeah, you tie your shoes. Why wouldn't you? But if you have one, if your character has one hand, which is actually a disadvantage, I think, then there might be a roll required. You might just seek help, or you might have a trick with one hand, or maybe you don't tie the shoes at all. Contest of the skills, basically, and there's two of them. There's this is after automatic successes. This is not part of automatic success. There's quick contest, which is two characters roll a similar skill versus win or lose. It's usually within one turn. Regular contest, similar to above, but for several turns. So arm wrestling is mentioned in the book. Next is page 88 with physical feats. Running is a move maneuver with your speed, your basic speed score. Then we have the running skill bonus if you have a running as a skill. Jumping, which again could be part of the automatic success because you can just jump. You can just jump over a snake or something, jump over a little rock or a little river. But you can have high jump, which is your strength times 3 minus 10 inches. Standard broad jump is strength minus 3 feet. Running broad jump is the same thing, but with a +1 every yard for +1 foot for every yard for takeoff distance. So if you're running and you take the long jump. Climbing skill. If you have a skill, obviously, the you see, I wrote down the C chart 89 because I'm not going to write down the whole chart, obviously, but I'm going to keep my books close by for the moments like that. You have lifting and moving things. This one's kind of interesting. You have one-handed lift, that's a max weight strength times 6. Two-handed lift, max weight strength times 25. Carry on the back, max strength times 30. Shove, knock over, strength times 25 or 50 with a running start. I love that. They have so much thought put into this just one simple thing, and that's the move things. However, you don't have to use any of that. You can just ask the GM, can my character do this? And they'd be like, sure, you're a big guy. I won't include a modifier on it. I'll use use the strength roll on strength. But if it's a smaller character, thin, and you're running and you're trying to do a run and push someone over or push a large brick out of the way, a large boulder, that might have a modifier on your strength roll, -2, -5. You can do that. You don't have to really the GM can keep track of what is sensible and what's realistic and not, or what makes sense in a fantasy world, in a fiction. So Next is throwing things. This is page 90. You throwing skill, or you can just do a simple dex -3. The max is 25 times your strength or less. That's how much you can throw, the max weight, I should say. Throwing in combat, see chart on page 90 for damage. This uses step and attack maneuver. Digging, based on a strength, read rules on page 90. Swimming, page 91. Swimming skill or strength minus, I think that's a 5. And DX minus or DX minus 4. So whichever attribute is higher, then you most likely want to choose the better one. Life saving is within swimming. That's rescue a drowning person. Swim roll -5 because that would make sense to have a modifier on that. The GM might just consider that without even looking at the book. Next is on page 92. That's a sense roll. That's your IQ related. You have a vision roll, hearing roll, and smelling and tasting. The vision roll is modifiers from alertness, acute vision, etc. Penalties if blind, darkness, etc. Hearing roll modifiers alertness, the same thing, but acute hearing, some penalties. Smelling and tasting, alertness, acute taste and smell. Page 93 is the will rolls. That's the IQ roll. So fright checks, or if you are trying to be frightening someone, or if you are getting frightened. Special type of will roll. Now we have basic combat. This was a big part for me because combat is always my weakness I'm working on in RPGs, especially trying to make it my own one-page RPG system. I think now it's called Solitary Chronicles. Page 95, combat turn sequence. Act one at a time. Start with the maneuver. End with your choice. End when you choose your next maneuver. Each turn is technically 1 second of real-world time. Then there's maneuvers. You have move with active defense, change position, stand, prone, kneel, etc., plus any defense. Ready, ready weapon, can parry with ready weapon. Page 96, reloading. We have aim a ready weapon, attack with a ready weapon, all out attack, see list on 96, but there is no active defense until your next turn, so you're open for attack and you're open for a weaker defense if the enemy is close by. So use that. It's hard to say when you would use that, but if your character is a barbarian, perhaps, or loves to just all-out attack, then that's probably part of your character, and that's most likely the thing you would do. But I say use that with strategy. Use that strategically. Then there's feint, or feint, if I'm pronouncing it right. Fake an attack, basically. Page 96 for some examples or a chart. Then there's wait on page 97. You just wait. All out defense, defend yourself, 2 defense attempts because you are defending, so you should have the right to defend yourself with a secondary different defense. If you try your first defense and fails, you have to do a different one. You can try a different one, I should say, like parry, dodge, block, etc. That's another thing that this game I have to get used to is a type of defense rolls you can do. Block, parry, dodge. I believe you roll at or below, which we'll get to it when it comes to defenses. And then your passive defense is just for the damage. But it's also part of the total that I think you count. So your active defense, you roll within. If you get hit, your passive defense is the damage calculated. We'll get to that in a second. I believe I'm wrong there, but again, we're getting pretty close to it. Page 97, concentrate. That's where we cast a spell. Long action. This was interesting. Generic choice, a multi-second action. Reference page 107. Free action, similar to similar. I just put see page 107. I wasn't too focused on those last two. Then there's making an attack. So this part I tried to be more thorough, more in my descriptions here, because again, combat is something I have to work on. Making an attack, you roll your 3d6 attack roll. If you succeed, defender makes defense roll. The defender fails, you roll for damage. Roll to attack, regular success related to effective skill. Now, defense, page 98. This is this is all basic combat. I'm not going to bother with advanced combat just yet until I perfect my knowledge on this system, or where I play the system just enough. Active defenses. Active defense is 3 active defensive: dodging, blocking, parry. Dodging is same as the move score. Blocking, you must ready your shield. Block rate is half your shield skill. Pairing with a weapon, active defense, half of your skill with that weapon. 4, is a special pairing rules. It says see page 99. Passive defense always protects you, no need to ready. One, armor. Your passive defense depends on type. See page 72. Two, the shield depends on the shield type. Page, or just depends on the shield size. Damage and injury. So, just to recap, as I see it, if you fail an attack, or okay, if the enemy is attacking Dex here, we want to roll for defense. Do we roll both? Do we roll at the total of your entire defense regime, passive and active? So 4 on top of 7, that's 11. Our block would be 10, 8 would be dodge. I have to think about that for a second. I could be missing something quite simple here, but if I'm looking at this right, active defense, 3 active defenses. Dodge, blocking, parrying. That's what we can do when you're being attacked. You can choose which one to do. So I probably should have wrote a little more in this part, but let's get back to that in a second. I will. Let's keep going, and we'll get back to it. I'll pause the video. I'll go through the book, and then I'll verify with myself essentially. And I'm sure there's some people are going to type this out, which is totally fine too. Next is damage and injury. You roll for damage. If enemy fails defense roll, roll for damage. Reference damage amount on character sheet via the mods, which is up here basic damage, and the weapon modifiers, and your skill. Enemy's DR subtracted from your damage roll. So only the damage resistant, it says, from your damage roll. It should also say PD too, but that's going straight from the book. So injury is damage exceeds enemy DR. I'm keep writing DR, so I'm imagining that's what it is. But the enemy's DR could be pretty high or pretty low. I did think about how to make NPCs for this, and that's one thing that might be a challenge for me, but NPCs meaning a monster or an enemy. I would want to make the character closer to myself or weaker. So his parry, dodge, block, it wouldn't be as similar to mine. It would have to be lower. Challenging characters would be greater, but you don't want to always miss. So, injury, the damage exceeds enemy DR. Don't forget weapon bonus. Range weapons. Throw weapons, roll throwing skill, weapon cannot be recovered. So if you have throwing axe during the turn, I should say, you might be able to pick up later, or if you throw it off the cliff or whatever, you can't get it back. Then there's missile weapons. It just says I just wrote down page 101. I don't usually use missile weapons that often. Then there's unarmed combat, which is really intriguing. Punching, roll for dexterity or brawling karate skill. Damage is determined by your strength or thrust -2. Reference basic weapon damage table. Improvised weapons, -1 damage you do with a punch. Small heavy object would be +1 damage. Large object would be +2 damage. Kicking, dexterity -2, or brawling -2, karate -2, which are skills. Thrust +1 with heavy boots. Parrying barehanded, half dex roll, 2/3 brawling, judo, karate skills. Unarmed combat skills, see page 50 to 51. Then there's injuries, illness, and fatigue. I just wrote down see page 126 to 134. I figure that's going to be not a very often thing to look for, but when you do encounter a moment you have to heal or you're dealing with an injury, I'll go straight for the book. I'm not going to write all that out. Then there's magic, which is not something I would completely use in this game. I'm a huge fan of Maze Rats' magic generation system, and then the mixture of Karen, which is it's just a spell book. You use it, it's gone. I feel like carrying that over for GURPS. However, I will go through the magic. I have not gone through it yet, but I will go through the magic of GURPS and see how it is. But that's just my bias at the moment. I prefer those two mixed together. And that's really it for my notes. That's everything I wrote in the past couple days, mostly today, I should say. But I hope it was intriguing. Again, I'm not here to teach you guys. If it was useful, that's great. Maybe you were looking for something and you were curious if you were doing something wrong on your character sheet and you were curious if I did it the same way or differently. And you're like, Okay, maybe that's I can try it that way. Again, if you took value out of this to your own benefit, that's fantastic. Two thumbs up. I appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear that. But there's still a mystery that I have to solve here, and that is the armor debate. So I'm going to go to the page, and then we'll continue on in a second. Okay, so you can stop the video right now if you feel like you've watched enough of me blabbering on for 46, 45, and 20, 45 minutes and 20 seconds. But if you're curious about this defense gate, which, again, it could be incredibly easy, I might be overcomplicating it, but one thing I'm curious is a couple things actually. What do I roll at when I choose an active defense and then calculating damage dealt to the enemy? And when an enemy attacks me, what do I roll at my defense? Vice versa. What does the enemy have active defense? So it says here, I'll move the camera a little closer. Okay, a little closer and hopefully a little sharper. So making the attack. Each attack is resolved by three die rolls. First, you is your attack roll. If your roll is successful, your attack was a good one. Now your foe must make a defense roll to see if he can defend against your blow. If he makes this roll, he is not hit. If he misses defense roll, your blow struck home and you roll for damage. If you choose to attack, all out attack, or wait maneuvers, you may try to hit a foe. In basic combat system, you don't need to worry about enemies' precise locations. You may attack any foe unless the GM rules the attack is impossible. Like, obviously, you can't swing your sword at someone who's 30 feet away. You can throw your sword, but that'll require a throw check. Rolling for attack. Your attack roll is a regular success roll. Figure your effective skill, plus or minus any appropriate modifiers with the weapon you're using. Okay, continue on for attack. For success rolls, end page 201, that's continuation of the last sentence, then roll three dice. If your roll is less than or equal to your effective skill, you have rolled well enough to hit the foe, and he must roll to defend, otherwise you missed. No matter your skill, the critical hit is 3-4, failure is 17-19. Okay, here's the big one for me, this whole entire page. If you make your attack roll, you have not yet actually struck your foe, unless you rolled a critical. You have thrown a blow that is good enough to hit him, unless he defends. Your foe's defense equals the total of his passive defense armor and his active defense armor. That was what I was looking for the enemy. So let's go to my notes here. Okay, this is page 198. So defense. Let's see. I have rolling for damage. What was the little section I made that's like a kind of a how-to for myself? 98 defense, active defense. Here it is. Okay, making the attack. Defender rolls. All right, so makes defense roll. Your foe's defense equals, I should write this down. Defense equals the total of passive defense plus active defense. Okay, so that makes sense. Active defense, passive defense. Okay. Passive defense is always protect, but active defense must be specifically chosen from those that are legal at the moment. Now, I should put a big if here. If AD is active. Okay, that makes sense. So if I fail to mention or use any of my active defenses, I have to roll at a 4 or less at the base. That does make sense. There's still that chance, but it's such a small window. Okay, now back to this. That the defense legal. This depends on the maneuver he chose on his last turn. See above. The defender rolls three dice. If his roll is less than or equal to his total defense, he blocked the blow or dodged it or whatever. Otherwise, his defense is ineffective if you struck home. If your blow hits your foe, roll for damage. Defense roll of 3 or 4, always successful. Even if your total defense was only 1 or 2, your roll suddenly is a critical failure. Beat defense. Your foe does not get an attempt at defense roll if you roll a critical hit. Okay. Oh, interesting. That is interesting. I did not know that. A defense roll of 3 or 4 is always successful, even if your total defense was only 1 or 2. Your foe does not get to attempt a defense roll if you roll a critical. So I should write that down. Same thing and vice versa. Let's see. If critical, no defense. I mean, you guys cannot see that. I do apologize. It's just off camera here. It's basically right here. Excuse me. All right, now, excuse me. Sorry about that. I should probably stop recording. There are 3 active defenses that can protect you against an attack. Each of these defenses is calculated in advance. When you are attacked, you may choose one active defense as part of your total defense roll. If you took all out defense, you may make it 2 separate defense rolls using different defenses. Your active defense depend on your situation, especially that the maneuver you chose last turn. Some maneuvers limit the active defense you can make. A stunned character active defense is -4. I'm not gonna worry about that. Sometimes you will have no active defense. A stab in the back from a friend, a sniper shot, or totally unexpected booby trap would be against your active defense. Combat reflex advantage +1 each of these active defenses. Dodging. Your dodge is the same as your move score. Dodging is often, let's make sure I have that right on my character sheet. Dodging is the same as your move score. Yep, 4-4. When you're not skilled, it's the best one to use when you're not skilled with a weapon or if you have no shield. You may dodge any attack except one that you did not know about. There is no limit to the number of times you can dodge in one turn. If you have acrobatic skill, you may try an acrobatic dodge, page 48. Animal dodge score is half the move or half its dexterity, whichever is better, up to a maximum of 10. Blocking, you must ready your shield, which makes sense. And then, oops, let me move this up a little bit. I apologize, guys. I'm not always looking at my camera. You must ready your shield, which is used to block the attack. Your block defense is half your shield or buckler skill. Rounded down in general, you can block any blade, club, axe, spear, polearm, etc. Whether you swung, or thrown. You may also block arrows, quarrels, I almost said squirrels, slung stones, and similar low-tech missiles. You cannot block bullets or beam weapons. These come too fast and be stopped with shield. All right. However, shield's passive defense helps against all weapons. That's interesting too. Now, parrying, special parry. Okay, good. But what I want to get to is passive defense. When you're attacked, you may also have a passive defense factor operating in your favor. Thanks to your armor shield, passive defense always protects you, even if you are unconscious or unaware of it. If you have any passive defense at all, your defense roll of 3 or 4 will succeed for you. Armor. The passive defense for your armor depends on this type. Shield, the passive defense for your shield depends on the size. Now this seems to make sense to me a little more. It always adds up, and I feel like it's best to take this game in strides. It's best to take little bite sizes of this game to learn it. Rolling for damage. This will be the final part of the video because everything else is we've already covered. If an enemy fails his damage roll, defense roll, you have hit him. You may make a damage roll. This roll tells you how much damage you did to your target. The number of dice you roll for its damage determined by your weapon. For low tech by your own strength, and shown box of your character sheet damage amount. If the enemy is wearing armor, the armor's defense resistance is subtracted from your damage roll for more details. Okay, so the damage resistance is also consideration. So right here, 2. That is all. The shield does not. So I thought the shield did. I could be wrong on that one. Does the shield provide a damage resistance? So that was what I was confusing. I was forgetting the damage resistance concept. That is what's calculated in the end when you get hit. Now, let's see. Defense. Let's see here. Put my notes aside. Shield type. Let's see. Character developments. We're going to go. Okay, here we go. Shields. The shield does not provide a damage resistance. It only provides what seems to be the passive defense. That is fair. I guess, yeah. I can't really think of anything. I did write shield in here, but I made mistakes. I must have corrected myself, knowing not to put that in here. So total of 2. So I only block 2 damage points each time. That makes sense. I see it now. I think it's clicking. So where were we? If the enemy is wearing armor, the armor's defense resistance is subtracted from the damage roll for details armor types. Magic spells and inborn toughness also provide damage resistance, which works just like armor. If you're lucky, you will roll enough damage to exceed the protection. Injury. If your total damage your roll exceeds the damage resistance of armor, skin, etc., protecting your foe, the excess hits are taken as damage. Example: your basic damage when you swinging your sword 2d, which is 2d6. You roll 2 dice, and an 8 is the result. The target has 3 points of damage resistance, so 5 of damage got through. Add the 50% damage bonus for cutting weapon, 2 points, because you're always round down. The damage is 7 points of damage, 7 hits of damage. Okay, there we go. That's really all I want to verify with myself. So we make the attack roll. Just to recap, let's get my 3 dice here. We'll use blue dice. Okay, we make the attack roll with my. Let's do the short sword. Where are you, short sword? I know I have a short sword here. There it is. 14 or less. Okay, obviously I got it. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. The enemy has a active defense total parry, let's say, of 6. So they roll. The GM rolls. That's a fail. We hit. They have a damage resistance of maybe similar. 2. So I roll my damage dice, perhaps 2. That's a 6. I won't worry about modifiers. Maybe. Oh, actually, I have to do based on my rules. Let's do a swing. 1, of course. That's 1 damage. So 2, I don't land a hit. If I rolled higher, a 4, I would do 2 damage. If I do a thrust, it is -2. Now, if we're being attacked, we have to roll for our defense, act defense. So we're rolling at 7 or less, which is going to be a fail here. Nope, I'm sorry. I walked back on my. I completely stepped back from all the progress that's made. It will be together with passive and whichever one I use. So parry +4, that's 11. We have to roll at 11, which that's. Oh, I rolled that before. So that's successful. We block. But if I failed, we'll try to fail. Okay, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's say I try to do dodge. I can't. That's a fail. We take damage. Minus, let's say they roll 1d, 3. I have damage for some 2. I take 1 hit. That seems to be how it's done. The one thing I cannot forget is that these two are connected. When you are rolling for defense, the core is passive defense. The choice is active defense, what you have readied or what you can do if you're not readied. So that's how I see it now. And I should write a little arrow here that these two are connected. But there you go. That's my video. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I feel like this was a great non-workshop video. Essentially, it was a workshop video, but I hope it was just interesting. For me, it was a learning experience. I really enjoy these rules. I feel like doing these little notes did indeed help, and I feel more ready for an actual GURPS campaign because not only writing down helps, but talking to you guys helps me too, significantly. And I hope it helped you out too in some manner. So Thanks for watching, and I hope you are enjoying this little GURPS trend I got going. I'll see you guys next time.